the inmates, the entire intake area, that whole first floor area that we talked about, that will be designed under what we call negative air pressure. So if you're putting in, say, 100 cubic feet of air per minute into a room, we're exhausting 110. So it's under negative air pressure, so you don't get, what that does is it exhausts all of potential airborne diseases. Like, because when somebody comes in the booking area, you don't know who they are or what they have. So it doesn't make any sense to have like a medical cell or a holding cell with negative air pressure. We designed the whole thing in that area under negative air pressure, so these communicable diseases don't get spread. We do that also in the medical area.
100%.
Okay, and Jim says we're also introducing 100% outside air into that space. So so the medical area, the whole area is designed that way. So it's a sanitary condition. We're not really putting people on top of one another. And like I said, this square footage is 4 times the size of your existing jail. So we're giving people a lot more space. Your existing jail, there's no place in your existing jail except maybe your gymnasium that has a 20-foot ceiling. All your living areas have 20-foot ceilings in this new design. So it's quite a different animal from what you have now.
And they're all natural. They have all access to natural light.
Yes. Every cell has natural light. Every day room has a skylight. The ACA, the federal standards dictate that we have to have a minimum of 12 square feet of natural light in every day room. We typically put at least one 4 by 4 foot skylight, so we typically put 16 square feet. The standards go in even further, that for every cell that does not have a window, you have to provide additional daylighting to the day room.
If I may, Dean, have you seen option 2 where they're renovating for your department? I mean, going down and looking where your people work and operate is as bad as looking at the jail sometimes, to me.
When you say, have I seen it?
Yes.
As far as what's...
Yeah, have you seen it?
Yeah, I mean, what's in the report, I've seen it, yeah.
Okay, more than we have?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is, you have, the sheriff's, I can't remember.
Have I seen it more than you have?
Yeah.
I saw it today for the first time.
Okay, that's my point.
I can't recall the total square footage of the sheriff's office, but it's something like 34,000 square feet or something like that, all the divisions within the sheriff's office.
I mean, to me, that's a must.
That includes under sheriff's office
Well,
operations.
We can call it a must, but I wouldn't call it an immediate must. What we need now is adequate housing space, updated medical space, efficient intake and booking area. I'm more concerned about the needs of the inmate right now. Not that I'm not concerned about my staff, don't get me wrong. But we can function as we are, and when the opportunity presents itself, or if the opportunity presents itself, we can phase in, moving the operational aspects of the sheriff's office to the facility. That's great, but let's get our immediate concerns addressed, which is the housing issues and the medical space and programming space and whatnot.
Thank you. That's what I need.
25. The square footage of all the divisions of the sheriff's office, 25,000 square feet.
I just got one question. I'm curious with John. If they don't do anything with the existing building, you're still going to have to maintain what's in there. If they don't, because you just can't shut it down. Have you given any thought to what that's going to take to keep it up?
Not specifically.
I mean, it doesn't go away.
Keep it functioning. If it's not used at the moment, yeah.
Well, parts of it are going to be used no matter what, because the staff is still down there, whether you renovate it or not.
Right. You have to keep the heat to a certain level. You can turn the plumbing off. You don't use electricity. You don't need to take it out, which you need to heat the space.
Just, I didn't know if those costs were figured in. It's something that needs to be considered when you weigh whether to go forward with renovating the other part, because that's still a legacy cost that's going to sit there forever.
Yeah.
And it's just going to keep getting worse if it's not getting used.
True.
Thanks.
Other comments from the committee discussion? I do want to suggest or point out at this point that we haven't delved into the finances of it for a couple reasons. Number one, we've taken quite a bit of time with the presentation of this report. I think we need to take some time to review everything. I would like to meet again next week. December 6th, I think the date is, same place, same time. And at that point, the county's administration and some of us that have been involved in that will have a more in-depth financial analysis to present about what our potential options are in terms of funding if we choose to do that. Does anyone have just comments on that or concerns about that? I mean, I think we got a good idea what the range is. You know, Joel presented basically the 32 to 37 million for the whole package, or 23 to 27 for the base. Is that right? But again, that's just a range, and the county administration is working to kind of narrow that down as far as what truly could we do and how we could do it if that's what we decide to do. So, discussions on that, comments?
Hoping we meet sooner the better. I'm wondering, the copy that you gave Ms. Hammersley of this, a lot more detail in that.
Yes, the full report, I have, like I said, I gave your administrator one hard copy. I gave Lynn a PDF electronic copy of the entire thing, so you could view it on your computer without. It's about that thick, and a lot of the pages are 11 by 17. But
Can I borrow that?
We can send it electronically.
Well, yeah, you can send it.
Or you can have
What's there, Joe?
because the final report was about 350 pages.
I'd like that night just to, when I can't sleep.
yeah.
Call me.
You can check it out of the library.
Okay, any other discussion from the committee or concerns? Again,
I just want to say, I think he did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I would charge us all to really study what we desire to study and come back next, that is yours, yeah. And come back next Thursday, 1:30 to start hearing some of the figures, actual figures. Okay? Next order of business then is other business. And item 5, is there other business? Julie, you brought something that you wanted to consider, somebody. You want to entertain something on this, or just for us to look at right now?
It's just supplemental information. We were given the comparative county analysis that looked at average daily population relationship of the population to the county population, and we thought that the supplemental information helped to explain some of that.
Okay, now we're going to move into public comment period. I have 4 requests to speak, however, okay, I'm not sure if there's not enough forms or whatever, but what we'll do is we'll go through the ones I have, and then we'll just kind of do it on a raise your hand basis, please. And I would like to try and keep it down to around 2 minutes, which is the county policy. I'm guessing there's probably going to be a lot of subject matter to discuss, so. With that, Larry Spataro on the new jail and youth center.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry Spataro. I live at 1567 6th Street in the city of Muskegon. First of all, let me just say I am here on my personal time. I am on annual leave today. And I am speaking as Vice Mayor of the city of Muskegon after consulting with the mayor and the city manager and having some informal discussions with the rest of the city commission. The mayor himself would have been here, but he got a late-minute conflict, so he was unable to attend.
Can you speak up just a little, sir?
Sorry. So I would like to break my comments down into 2 separate issues because I see this has been presented all along as 2 separate items, so I'll address it the same way. First of all, clearly there's a need for a new jail. The capacity of the jail, to me, is something that is up to the court system and the sheriff to figure out what is an appropriate size. But anybody who's gone through the current jail facility knows that it is unconscionable that it is still in use, that it doesn't work, and we need a new facility. And we would just as soon keep that facility in downtown Muskegon for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is we appreciate the economic impact of having the sheriff's deputies who work here, stay here, and support the local businesses during the course of their day. However, we are not in support of any proposal that would require the elimination of part of the city infrastructure. It was a very recent addition that this proposal would require the vacation of Pine Street. Having spent over a decade on the Planning Commission and having done a lot of research and learned a lot about urban planning over the years, one of the things that we learned that harmed our downtown over the years was closing off the street grid and restricting traffic access. And as a result, not for the only reason, but one of the reasons our downtown started to wither was that lack of proper traffic circulation. Closing off Pine Street would be an economic blow to our redevelopment downtown. Now, on the bright side, it does appear that this facility is not contiguous to the existing building, but is connected by a corridor. And a potential compromise that we would gladly support would be if the building was moved out of the street right away and that corridor either elevated or turned into a tunnel so that Pine Street could remain open and we were not causing harm to our downtown business district. So if that can be done, that is certainly a proposal that we could get behind and support. The other item has to do with the Youth Transition Center. Again, anybody who's been through that facility knows that it is inadequate and does not meet the needs of the children of this county. Unfortunately, despite the fact that we were told that everyone's had an opportunity to be heard, Craig School was not listed as an item during the various public design charrettes. And the first notion that Craig School would even be considered as an option for this facility, and the first chance for public comment has been basically this meeting here today. I know the neighborhood intimately well. I live a block away from Craig School. There are houses facing Craig School on all four sides. For those who've been in Muskegon a little bit longer, you may remember a while back the city of Muskegon created Clara Shepherd Park a few blocks away from this site and removed the rims from the basketball courts that were mentioned in this presentation. Why did we do that? Because even though we had a pretty good handle on keeping those courts closed at night, the fact is that the basketball and the noise attendant to that created a lot of disruption and distress for the homeowners who face those basketball courts. And the idea that this site could be fenced in and have this kind of activity would be extremely distressing to this part of the neighborhood. This is just not an acceptable use for this site. In fact, Craig School as the alternative school has created quite a bit of hardship on the immediate neighbors between the traffic and the kids who walk off that you can't smoke on school property and so on. And it has been quite a bit of problem. I know that I have some neighbors here who will be speaking as well on this issue. Oftentimes when someone like myself makes these kind of comments, I've been accused of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Well, I will challenge you with, why is it always in my backyard? Why is it Nelson has the men's rescue mission and the women's rescue mission, and the high school, and Nelson School, and 6 churches, and more adult foster care homes in the entire city of Norton Shores? And that's just in the residential areas. We're not even talking about the commercial areas. We also have things like the clubhouse for the severely mentally ill folks. We have the lemonade stand. We do our share, and we shoulder a significant amount of social service responsibility within our neighborhood. And speaking as a resident of that neighborhood, and on behalf of my neighbors and constituents, I think we do enough. And I think it's time for us to look elsewhere for a facility of this type. It may be convenient and it may be cheap, but as the Dr. Schultz says, isn't it first most important to do no harm? And I think in this case, locating a facility of that type in a neighborhood, in a facility that's been a problem over the years, would cause too much harm for the benefit of cheap. So those are my comments. I hope you take those into consideration when you do your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Matt Crehan to discuss jail.
Good afternoon. Well, if any of you need a good bedtime story, it looks like they provided you with one. One of the things that was brought out at the meeting, the series of meetings at the end of August, was the fact that there's approximately a third to half of the inmates in the jail on the date that was various dates that were chosen that were classified as obstruction of justice. And the sheriff indicated at that time he was going to go ahead and have his staff go into a little more detail as to what exactly those people are in there for. Has that yet been done?
Yes, sir, it has. Reported to this committee a few meetings ago.
Okay, so you have that, is that the amount, is that,
Online?
is that, it's online?
No. Is it?
It should be, yeah,
It's in the meeting minutes.
part of the minutes, yeah.
Okay. So what did that brief, that came out to still needing the number of beds that you're going for?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, one other thing that was just brought out was that there's this underlying current of the state is going to be having the county take prisoners. Well, if there's no room in the jail, the county can't take the state's prisoners. And one of the things the federal government's fond of doing is saying to the states, here, you take it, we're not going to give you the check to go ahead and pay for it. And the state as well is fond of saying to the local units of government, here, you go handle us, but we're not going to give you the check, go ahead and get the money somewhere else. Has the state said anything at all about chipping in for any costs of this project?
Of this project?
Okay.
No, because it's a local project.
But then you're saying, you said earlier, the state is going to be, you said it, or the gentleman from Kalamazoo said it, that the state's going to be requiring, was that the word I heard?
No, one of the drivers of looking at some of the facility needs in terms of housing space and housing design, one of the drivers is the potentiality for policies at the state level to continue to hold more felons at the local sites. Now, if a judge orders a felon in jail to be held in the county jail, I'm going to hold him here.
Right. I understand you have no
I'm
choice.
sure you're well aware of that.
Right, but if the judge realizes there's no room, then he can say instead of 12 months, maybe 12 months and a day, it should be off to Jackson. So
No, not if the sentencing, if it's a cap at the state that doesn't allow for that. There are what's called lockout, if the person falls within the lockout grid, prison lockout.
Well, no, it's, there's intermediate.
Which basically becomes a prison lockout. Even though it's a felony, their guidelines are scored as such as a felony, but it doesn't score them to the point where they go to prison, then they're held in local jail.
Right.
As the state shifts their policies and those guidelines expand or decrease, in our case, that means there's a potential for more what used to be state level prisoners coming to the local level.
But as we speak today, we don't know that, right?
Well, I think if you look at the trend across the nation and follow the trends, that is coming. There is an emphasis nationwide to do more at the local level.
Well, I realize that, but there might be the emphasis, but these people that are requiring us to do more at the local level are all on the state level, and once again, they come and hint and cajole and put the carrot before the stick, and basically do everything to write the check. So if they're not,
Welcome to my world.
if they're not willing to write the check, then I don't think the county need to worry about what the state's desires are.
I think we do, because if the judge says the person's going to the jail, I still have to hold them at the jail.
Right, that indicates there's also other options, as we also discussed over the 4 days.
Not necessarily. I think, you know, I'd hate to be to the point where we don't prepare for it, and then it comes, and now we gotta scramble and figure something out. Let's prepare for it. Let's do this right.
Well, I think one of the
Okay.
ways to, I'm almost done, by the way.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways to prepare for it, let's say all of a sudden it comes upon you where you're quote-unquote stuck doing it because the state guidelines change, is that there's other counties who have been foolish enough to build large jails and they have their overcapacity. So severely ship the prisoner there at a fraction of the cost that it's going to cost to build and house them.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're talking about something that you really don't know a lot about. It's more expensive to house a prisoner outside a outside county. It's more expensive in the long run to the taxpayers of the community that's sending them out. So, I mean, it's like when you were convicted of your felony, you were sentenced here, right?
Right.
You spent your time here, even though it was a felony. Even though it was a felony.
Right.
Okay. So and there's more of that coming. We can see that.
Well, that depends on what the judge does. In my case, the judge could have given me probation. He didn't have to do that.
But again, whatever the judge says is going to happen is what I'm going to do. That's my point.
Well,
Okay,
I
excellent.
understand. You're charged with whoever the judge goes ahead and says, here you go, here you got to take him. You got to take him.
Mr.
Give me about 30 more seconds to be done. I don't want to go over Mr. Staro's time limit. But the thing that still has to be kept in mind here is that it's always up to the community to decide ultimately who should be in jail. And we still are, I'm getting the feeling, the impression on this whole committee that you're doing something today, then you're going to do something next week, and it's like there's going to be a bum's rush to get something through. I don't think that should happen here.
I disagree. There's been no bum's rush. This is not an effort to bum rush anything. I think we've exercised extreme due diligence in this whole process. Again, there's been no decisions made. We are at the point now where we have a framework to start making some decisions, some detailed decisions, but nothing's been decided. But now we have a framework to start working with them to make those decisions.
You're willing to put this on the ballot then too, right?
I don't see, no, I'm not gonna go for a millage. I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers who ask for a millage on this.
What about just an advisory question? Do they want it yea or nay, like the city of Muskegon did with the Sapphire zoning?
I don't think that's an expense worth incurring. I mean, that's what this committee is. This is a committee made up of representatives from different parts of the community, different commissioners, different disciplines. We're kind of the advisory for the citizens. That's how I see it.
Even though most of you draw a government paycheck. Thank you.
Yay. Mr. Parker on the juvenile side.
Good afternoon, everyone. When this issue come about, I was asked, how did the neighborhood feel about it, the residents in the neighborhood feel about it? And I spoke with many of them, residents in the neighborhood, on the phone and through email. And it was consistent that we looked at the neighborhood as trying to build a secure and safe place. But yet, when we look around, there's always something happening in Nelson neighborhood. And we are quite appalled with that. If most of you are not familiar with Craig School, that is a large area of space. And to secure a space like that will cost you a lot of money. It goes from one end of Park and Southern to 6th to East to West Forest, all the way back around to Park Street. And to put a transitional center there right in the neighborhood, the hub of the neighborhood, where we already are experiencing a lot of problems within that neighborhood. And I'm sure many of you realize that there's things happening in that neighborhood all the time that we're trying to fight against. and we're hoping for the best for that neighborhood. We want that area to be nice for people to come in. We want it to be nice so that we can patronize the businesses that are coming to the downtown area. We would like for the kids to grow up in a safe and secure environment, but we can't do that when we're always fighting against an opposition, which we see is quite destructive to that community. And I'm hoping that when you consider this proposal for Nelson, Craig School that is, you know, that not let the economic be a factor. Let it be that it will benefit what we would like to see in that community. We would really love to see that community grow and be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Mills, general consensus regarding new jail plan.
Thank you. My name is Dan Mills, 1817 Mills Avenue, Bryan, 445. And I'll keep this under 3 minutes if I'm not interrupted. We don't want to get into a debate right now, right? This is my clear talk. Appreciate it. Anyway, this planning process began with public involvement. This I'm quoting my friend here, the speaker for today. Big turnout at the charrette, AKA charade. That's what my friends call it. The general consensus was that we need a new jail. The question was how big, and I got to correct that. Actually, the general consensus was quite different. The turnout was big. The general consensus was overwhelming. And the general consensus is, as it has been, that the current facility is poorly mismanaged. That it is, it actually violates ethics, codes, human dignity, and human rights. As was stated at the committee, involvement committee, Citizens Review Committee, which was, you know, quickly dispatched. Committee chairman, this is all on video, I'm not making this up, and it's verifiable online. Violates human rights issues, violates codes, even though the sheriff corrected me that they've never been cited. Big difference between being cited and being in violation. Anyway, the general consensus is and has been and was that there has not been convincing evidence, such as a comparison of cost analysis between refurbishing the existing facilities and building new. Now, a lot of people just blow off the idea of refurbishing the existing facilities, but I gotta tell you, I come up in a family in the trades, property development, and my brothers and I, as partners, developed the Midtown building, for instance, the Hackley Hume building, a lot of the historic buildings downtown, the Hubby House, and a bunch of others. It does take a certain, a little bit extra know-how rather than building a new facility. You can't just follow a blueprint, you gotta know what you're doing. But it is actually cost-effective to refurbish existing buildings. They've been doing it in Europe for centuries. But that has not been presented. Matter of fact, questions that were asked in May, and you can see these online again with these videos, I'm not making it up, have not been answered still. Citizens ask questions and they haven't been answered. They're interested. They haven't been answered and they weren't answered at the charrette. It's obvious to the citizens that the driving force in this jail expansion plan is money. As Ms. Hammersley herself said, and is on video online early enough, that this is viewed as a revenue resource, a source of revenue, which isn't a good reason to lock people up. She said over and over again, cost savings, we're getting the cost down to zero by stacking the cells up, by reducing the staff, and by limiting conversations with inmates and their families and their attorneys and the judges to video conferencing. And so we can reduce the cost to zero, and that is a national trend, of course. Money is the driving force, and we're not seeking to actually, as I asked, satisfy current market needs, or are we trying to increase our market share? And Ms. Hammersley's answer was, well, we're looking towards state and regional partnerships. Now, I'd like to ask you, how is some kid locked up here who's actually from somewhere else in the state going to visit with mom and dad, or his judge and his attorney, other than video conferencing? And so we're looking to increase revenues, reduce costs, and stack them in like a hen house and raise chickens, you know, instead of people. Anyway, the people, general consensus, the people in this community deserve and expect to be able to vote on this, because it's quite a big expenditure and it impacts the people here. And the people in this community are pretty outraged at the notion that a bunch of people sitting behind a counter here can make this kind of a decision. in their face and against their will. Now, there was also a big turnout on M Live, because this issue was brought up, and Eric was telling everybody at the time, it was a big turnout there. Conversations about this jail expansion plan. I checked in from work. By the way, I'm on my free time too. I took the day off of work, and so I'm not getting paid to be here. I'm actually sacrificing that to be here. But I was able to check in there at noon in the lunch hour, and I noticed that there was a big turnout. It was 100% against the jail plan. The only supporter was Mr. Gardner himself, Advanced Publications, AKA reporter, quote-unquote reporter. Mr. Carter was on that.
Wrap it up.
Okay, there were zero answers to questions that were asked, as always, and so there's that. Now, I would just like to say one thing in closing. If you do want to find real information, not propaganda, look online, derailthejail.org. Derailthejail.org has links to the videos of you yourselves. And
Thank you.
thank you.
More sheets. Okay. Yeah, anyone else? Is there anyone else? Raise your hand if you want to. Ms. Scott?
Thank you.
Dorothy Scott, 3176 Gilster Drive in Muskegon Heights, and to the council and to the committee. My question is to Joe. You talked about maybe the existing jail, and you want to keep 160 inmates in the basement. Visiting the jail and looking at the 160 down there, the lighting is very poor. There's no windows, and they have to have natural light. So I just want to know, are you going to renovate that basement? Is going to be plenty of light? Is you going to open up some windows where these people can have natural light? Thank you.
Actually, I asked him that very question. So.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We contacted the state jail inspector to see if they would allow, if they would grandfather that space in as meeting the MDOC standards. And they told us if we did some plumbing upgrades, we'd need to add some showers and improve the lighting and things of that nature, so that we do have a budget to do some renovation down there and get it in compliance with MDOC standards and clean it up. So yes, we will be doing some of that work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other audience members? Sir?
I'll be very brief. My name is Kwame James. I am remembering the charrette process from a few months ago, and I am enjoying the commitment that the administration and the county seems to be putting toward collaborating with the community on figuring out the best solution for the current conundrum. I do appreciate that politics plays an important role in any sort of group decision, and when there's a situation like this where we're all collaborating to come to an agreement, people often are telling the story of what's happening from their own individual perspective, with sometimes a very blatant disregard for the other perspectives and the other versions of the story that are being perceived by the other people in the room. So, knowing that everybody has a different take on what's right and what's wrong here, I think it's really important to recognize that the word consensus, as applied to what we're dealing with in terms of the state of our agreement right now, is I think a little overblown. I don't believe there is such a thing as a consensus on this issue right now. And I think it's important to be aware of that one fact as we proceed forward, because when there isn't that broad agreement, then you're certain to upset somebody's apple cart. So unless we can actually come to a real consensus, I believe we better all remember to tread very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Others?
Well, excuse me. My name is Dylan Hawk. I live at 2019 Harrison Avenue in Lakeside. And one of the thoughts that struck me as I was listening to the presentation today is that we are talking about the new jail as an ideal, as it seemed, as the population stands today. If we expand and build this new jail, or renovate and expand, we will have this much room per inmate. But what is to stop us from overcrowding this new, even larger jail as well, as the national trends also go? I've seen an ever-increasing expansion of jails and prisons across this country. We have one of the highest incarceration rates in the world. And my question is, when does it stop? When do we stop building more space to house people who have committed crimes? There are some people who need to be in jail, let's face it, but there are other people who don't necessarily need to be in jail. There are alternatives. But when do we stop just expanding to cover all those folks, to just throw them in there? And when do we start considering how to fix the societal problems that each community faces at the local up through the federal level, and adjusting the country we live in to better take care of its citizens, to educate and to provide health care and housing, and so that we create better citizens, so that we have fewer people to lock up in the first place. I see this new jail, I want better conditions for the inmates, absolutely. But I don't want to see an expansion of a jail that in turn becomes overcrowded just like all the rest have. And then, just as the gentleman said so passionately, then we have a serious health problem. People are being thrown in a hole, and whatever the ventilation is, if you put too many people in a small space, we're going to have problems. It's not humane, it's not healthy. And I don't think that it's illogical to make the leap that that is a likely scenario in this situation locally and across the nation. And I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Ladies first.
Nell Schaefer. I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. One, will the report delivered today be available to the public, and how will it be available?
Will we post it on the website, or is it still on SharePoint, or just the website?
We will post it on the website.
Okay, on the county website, thanks. And then also I have questions about the visitation. I know that in the report you mentioned that contact visits will be an option, and you also mentioned that it could be a privilege for families and children. I would say that it shouldn't just be a privilege for families to be able to visit with each other. We had people here already testifying to this committee about the importance of contact visits for infants and children. And also if we think about recidivism, I think family cohesion is very important. But I'm wondering if you can expand on that. So what is that privilege, or what does that look like? Is it just for attorneys?
Contact visits generally are reserved for attorneys or possibly clergy given certain circumstances. The issue with contact visits is they're very security intensive and very staff intensive. And there's very, very few national models that identify contact visit as the normal course of business. So it's just such a large security concern and staffing concern that it just isn't feasible in a lot of places.
Then I would ask, what is the reasoning then for going to video visitation? Can we keep the no contact visits, what I would assume would be what we have at the current facility, which is a glass and phones, glass between people? Right. Why does it have to go to video?
Well, video visitation accomplishes a number of things, I think, that are a benefit. Number one, it allows us to expand our visitation hours. Right now, we're confined by basically business hours, absent the meal times, we have to shut down the facility when we pass the meals, you know, a couple, 3 times a day. Visual visitation could basically occur 24 hours a day.
But will it? I mean, I don't think
Well-
you're going to allow visitation 24 hours a day.
I would have no problem doing that if the technology and the infrastructure was in place, because what it allows for is it reduces inmate movement. The most dangerous time in any correctional facility is when there's inmate movement. That's the most concerning time, because the video units themselves are in the housing units. You know, the visitations could be basically continuous through the weekends. We don't do weekend visitations because of, again, because of staffing and resource availability, but we could certainly open it up for weekends and holidays and all kinds of things.
Then my follow-up question would be, what input have you gathered from inmates and their families and friends about what type of visitation they would prefer?
None, because the visitation policy is the policy of the administration. It doesn't come from the inmates.
Right. Okay, I just think it's important to keep in mind the needs of the inmates that you all on this board profess to, you know, you're really looking out for them. I think that it's important to take into account the opinions and perspectives of the people who are affected by incarceration as well. And that brings me to another point, which in this presentation there was one slide about alternatives and diversion. This was very glossed over. We're talking about $37 million, $30 million to build an expanded jail, and based on the last point as well, so putting more people in jail, and then we don't have any sort of real study that I've seen about implementing a drug court, for example. So what are the numbers, what are the resources that you as the administration are going to actually put concretely into making sure we don't just, we need to, you know, use the whole park, you know, the whole parking lot across Pine Street, etc. So where is the concrete information on that?
Well, if you could maybe scale down your question, where's the concrete information on what?
Diversion programs. So there was a slide that listed, I think, 10 to 12 different options or ideas, but then the slide
I don't have
is
it with me,
glossed
but we
over.
have a book that the courts use about the available diversion programs. I don't know if they have their copy.
I guess I'm talking about expanding as well. So expanding the diversion programs, implementing new diversion programs, things that have been talked about or mentioned, but not really studied in the same way that we've just studied expanding the jail.
And you're asking for dollar signs, or like?
You know, when I look
And I
at
can
it,
tell you there's a commitment by the administration, by myself, and by the prosecutor-elect and the county board as far as the Veterans Court, the drug court concept, expanding our options for the females, the mental health court and the mental health diversion. You know, we've added another staff person with CMH to help accomplish a greater diversion effort there. West Michigan, sobriety court is going strong. It's basically, as community partners come to us and we can possibly implement something, nobody wants to implement a diversion program for the sake of implementing a diversion program. It's got to be something that's going to have some effect. So that's the kind of things that we are looking at.
right, I guess when I mentioned the numbers, I think because it becomes clear to the community and to myself that if we spend $30 million to build a bigger jail, then, you know, and we don't have these other concrete numbers, because sure, it comes down to numbers, right, about how much we're actually spending to make sure we don't need an expanded jail and we don't need to expand in the future. I don't see that, and so to me it seems like a lack. The other thing I wanted to mention was Craig School. I also live in Nelson neighborhood. I don't think there's been appropriate time for residents to give feedback about placing the Juvenile Transition Center in that neighborhood. I also don't understand, I think within the presentation today, Mr. Marak mentioned that the Juvenile Transition Facility should not be in a residential area. I don't understand the difference between McLaughlin School and Craig School. They're both in residential areas. There's houses on all sides of both of those schools, and so it seems to me that doesn't make sense. If you didn't want to place the transition center in a residential neighborhood, the Nelson neighborhood and Craig School is a residential neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
That is it.
Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Riley. I also am the host of Eye on Muskegon, which is a radio show, political radio show. We are videoing this. It'll be posted on eyeonmuskegon.com if anybody is interested. Really having a great party video for sometime later on in the week. But most of us, when we look to make a significant purchase, certainly in the level of a car or a house, the first thing that we do is we do an assessment of the amount of money that we've got for the car. Most people don't automatically wake up and say, I'm going to go buy a Ferrari or a Bentley or a Maybach. They say, hey, what kind of money do we have? And then we look accordingly. And most of you here, I would hope all of you, but sometimes I wonder, should understand that we are competing with surrounding communities, in particular Kent County and Ottawa County, for residents, but more importantly for employers. And of course the employers provide employees, and of course all of that provides taxes in a variety of levels to pay for the various expenditures that folks here talk about every week. And I'd like to at least give you a sense of where we are in Muskegon County compared to arguably our biggest competitor in West Michigan, and that would be Ottawa County. Because we're talking about bonded debt, and we're talking about issuing this bonded debt, in other words, borrowing money without having a public vote, and I would suspect a truly public explanation of really what the numbers mean. So I'd like to put them in a little context. Ottawa County, currently their bonded debt per resident is about a tenth what Muskegon County's is. So in other words, we currently, before penny one on fix up the jail or build a new jail, we have over 10 times the bonded debt that Ottawa County has. And let's put some numbers to that. The total bonded debt that Muskegon County currently has is $156 million. So 20, 30, 40, $50 million is a big, big jump from that current number, which is already pretty extraordinary. Ottawa County bonded debt is $23 million. Now those are big numbers and those are important numbers, but there's more. We also have, we hire employees here in Muskegon County and we pay them, but we don't set aside enough money to actually pay and make good on the promises that we make them. We are underfunded significantly in our employee pension fund and in our employee retirement health care fund. And I'll give you the numbers again to our biggest competitor, the competitor who we are competing with every day for residents, for businesses, for employees. Ottawa County's unfunded employee pension and health care debt, this is the underfunding now, it's $39 million. By the way, Ottawa County is about 50% larger than us in terms of population. $39 million. Muskegon County's underfunded is about $110 million. Well, these numbers are changing a little bit, but significant difference. Now, take 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars, and if you say no, fine, let's get some facts, because you have a dashboard, and the dashboard is quite clear, and we can all look that up. But these numbers are, and if they're off, clearly 10 or 20 million here or there doesn't seem to be a significant number. But when we've got bonded debt and when we've got underfunding for the employee pensions, which somebody's either got to pay, someone's got to pick it up. I thought maybe I could get nearly as much as some of the others, but we can either pick up the funding from employers or residents or employees, or we could default on the promises made to the employees. So again, significant numbers. You throw another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million, it matters a lot. It seems to me that, as you so cavalierly suggested, that we can bond it, we're not going to go to the public. I think that's, I say that's outrageous, and that saddens me and it frightens me. Thank you.
Yay. Okay, anyone else?
Hi, my name is Karen Bednarik. I live in Bluffton. And having been a school social worker for 37 years, I see that a lot of the kids who started out with lots of strikes against them, when I sadly look at the reasons that some of them end up in our jail, it's that they're self-medicating, taking marijuana, and they have maybe passed a joint or have possession. But because they are the underprivileged and under-supported kids, they end up in our jail, and a lot of times for a significant amount of time. So I've been interested in this issue from the beginning, and I went to the charades, or charrettes, and I don't remember, and I remember the community coming out against McLaughlin School and being pretty eloquent in terms of their reasons for doing that, and but I don't remember Craig School being identified as a possible alternative. As well, I didn't remember that we discussed at the charrettes the possibility of expanding the current facility. So I was wondering where the public input was for those alternatives that seem to be the ones that are recommended right now. When was the chance for the Craig neighborhood to come and speak to that, as well as the people who live around here and will be affected by the expansion of the current jail?
I'll answer that. There hasn't been any yet because no decisions have been made. We haven't gotten to the point of holding community meetings, which we certainly will. I mean, we will be out, if that's the direction we look at going, we will be out in the Nelson neighborhood community. We'll be out within this, would be with the neighborhood, the church across this way, sorry. The church across the street has been a great partner with the county in terms of parking lot use and different space around the county in terms of their needs. They're going to have to be talked with. We are just to the point where we can start making some of the decisions of who we got to go out and talk with.
I guess I was misinformed. I thought that this meeting was, and the results of the report that you worked with, a decision was somewhat imminent.
Well, a recommendation's been made, but we still have to digest all the ins and outs of that recommendation, and if that's the direction we need to go, then absolutely we have to get the input from the stakeholders.
Okay, it seems like that should be the input from the stakeholders first, then the recommendation, because that should be considered prior to the recommendation. But I will hold my comments there.
Hey, anyone else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn, is there support?
Second.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. December 6th at 1:30 for the financial. All right.